know. He's hardly had time to catch his breath. Liam, look, I know initially when we first planned this show we were going to be talking about loads about the cost of living. I'm sure we'll come on to that a little bit. But the most relevant question at the moment is Jeremy Hunt remaining on as Chancellor, right? A sound move from Sunak, do you think?
I think it would have been ridiculous not to keep him on as Chancellor. We've already had 4 Chancellors in as many months. People have been producing sort of calendars and wall charts. The name of the game at the moment is stability. Boring as a positive word. Jeremy Hunt is never going to punch the lights out. He's not particularly effervescent politician, I think, by his own description, but he is seen as competent. He's got a very strong track record in business. He's health secretary for 6 years. He knows how to run a big department. He knows how to handle money. And by the looks of it so far, he seems to be in lockstep with Rishi Sunak. So it would have been change for change's sake to not keep him there at a time when financial markets, Patrick, do seem to be settling down a little.
And this is why I suspect now that we're seeing... This could be famous words. Someone clips this and plays me back in 2 weeks' time when Downing Street's on fire again. But potentially quite clever politics from Rishi Sunak, because if he has put, quote-unquote, a proper Conservative in charge as Home Sec, he's got a few Brexiteers in there as well in key offices of state. He's kept a bit of stability, like in the shapes of Ben Wallace and James Cleverly, and a Chancellor that doesn't spook the market. The Tories are back on top, are they?
Yeah, I mean, interestingly, I've just been hitting the phones. I've been talking to a couple of Tory activists I know, people out in the shires. And, of course, there's a lot of anger that they didn't have their say, that this is a coronation. Of course, among a lot of them, they're still saying, why did MPs get rid of Boris? We wanted Boris. He wasn't never given a chance. But I do think now there's a sense that it's better to get behind Rishi Sunak. As I said, borrowing costs for the government are falling. They're down from 4.2% at the weekend to now like 3.6%. 3.7, a huge adjustment downward. Now lower, Patrick, that 10-year gilt yield than it was before the mini-budget, which is interesting.
Yeah.
And, of course, it sounds arcane, but that gilt yield, the cost of government borrowing, that ripples out across the economy. Your mortgage, personal loan rates, they're always going to be higher than that government cost of borrowing. So the lower that government cost of borrowing, the lower should be, when you take out new loans, remortgage, all the rest of it, your borrowing costs as well.
Fantastic. Grant Shapps now. You are, of course, our economics and business editor,
Steady.
Liam. Sometimes I feel as though the business element of that gets a bit overshadowed by what's been going on in the economy. But Grant Shapps, well, you've got someone else to get your teeth stuck into now. What do you make of him as our new business sec?
Well, he's kind of a safe pair of hands, Grant Shapps, isn't he? He has got a bit of a patchy record in business. There's been some controversy over his business dealings in the past. He's not here to defend himself, and it's all on the record. But there have been, allegations that he's used different names in business and so on. But he is a very effective communicator. You have to hand it to him. He's good on a sticky wicket. He's good in interviews. He is somebody who clearly understands business and can read a balance sheet, if you like. He's famous for reading spreadsheets, of course, because he's very good at tracking which MPs are voting for whom. But I think they're a pretty humdrum appointment. It will be a tough time for business. He will need a business secretary, Rishi Sunak, who can talk to business at a time when corporation tax is going up and so on, and is seen to be on business's side as the economy struggles. And I guess he's hoping that Grant Shapps can fulfil that role. Yeah,
indeed. And just sticking with you for a second, Liam, because if I'm looking at this now and I'm looking at Rishi Sunak in number 10, obviously Prime Minister, and Jeremy Hunt in number 11, one would imagine that really Rishi Sunak could well be both Prime Minister and Chancellor at the same time.
Well, it's not often that Chancellors actually become Prime Ministers, or at least not for very long. John Major became Prime Minister, he hadn't been Chancellor for very long, and then Gordon Brown, having been Chancellor for a long time, didn't spend very much time as Prime Minister. But clearly Rishi Sunak has been Chancellor very recently for a fair amount of time, and importantly, during COVID. The reality is, Patrick, I think when future historians look back on this, a lot of what Rishi Sunak's got to do is clear up his own mess, in a sense. Now, he would say, his supporters would say, it wasn't his fault that he spent very heavily during COVID on furlough and business support loans and so on. But I think he could have spent less.